Alright guys, so I'm going to do an 8th CCC invite commercial. So today we're going to be talking about how good the clan is, and like how fun everyone is, and that wasn't part of... Are you fucking... Are you alright there, buddy? Hey! You okay?
Oh fuck, that hurts.
You right, dude?
Oh god, the next gen people, they're fucking insane.
What do you mean you came from the old... Wait, where'd you come from?
Bro, I'm from next gen.
The new gen?
Yeah, get in my truck, I'll tell you more about it.
Jesus Christ. So, man, it must have been rough. Yeah. So, how have things been? Besides,
Oh, it was fucking shit.
Jeez. Yes, really
Bro,
sad.
this guy stopped at a green light, what the fuck?
Hey, get out of the way, buddy! No.
Fuck this.
So tell me more about the new gen.
There are fucking insane people there and I have
You
no
got a gaming
idea.
girl?
Almost 40 times every fucking day.
Good, you haven't. How about getting shotguns shoved up your ass?
Shut the fuck
Yeah, really gotta suck, man.
I got PTSD from the fucking K2 demons.
I don't know what to say. Also, by the way, join CCC, everybody.
What the hell is CCC?
I'm also going to be having a podcast called Homeboy and Black Horse. Please watch it. And also, please
I don't
CCC.
remember being in a podcast, what the fuck?
I'm bored. There's nothing to do. Is that Ganyu? That's not Ganyu. No way. I want it.
What the hell am I hearing? Hey, what are you watching, bitch?
What?
Yeah, what the hell are you watching?
No, there's nothing going on my laptop. Fuck off.
Sounds like bullshit.
Go away. That's nothing.
Fuck no, sounds like hentai to me.
See, it's nothing. See, it's...
Bro, what the
shit.
fuck? She's like 15. What the fuck? On my computer too. Hell nah. Wait a fucking minute. Isn't she Ganyu from Genshin Impact? Hell nah. Velp, it's time to get a chance to get fucked up, bitch. Now I will put you with a clone of mine and you will die, bitch.
I'm sorry. Oh no! Where am I? Where the hell am I? Hey, lady. Who are you, Sylvie? Where are your clothes? What in the hell? Let's just... I'm not gonna question you. Let's just go. Just tell me a little bit about yourself. Okay, let's speak. Hey, buddy, can you help us out here?
Oh, time for your death.
Oh shit.
You're not getting away from me, bitch.
Oh shit! Get back!
You think bullets will stop me? Fuck, where did he go and start the shit here?
I gotta go with the... I gotta...
Whatever fuck you are, we'll find the bitch.
Quickly. Go... Yeah, bro! Nay, bitch! I know you hear me.
Nay, bitch! Someone dick!
Yeah!
Where did he go and start the shit here?
Die, 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 die.
Gotta go, gotta go. Forrest, nay, bitch! Get out! Liz, I don't want to die. Hey, miss! Ow! Up and up! Good running! Lady, I'm here! I'm gonna call you Mrs. Turpin. Let's go. No! Mrs. Turpin! Why'd you have to kill
Whatever,
me?
you'll join her soon, ha ha ha.
Nay, nay, bitch! Suck it!
Oh shit, that hurt. Where am I? Well, fuck.